On the second accused, the prosecution raised only two issues against her. That is to say, she is an influential media personality who is likely to intimidate and influence the nature of the case. B, her house is a secondary crime scene and some potential witnesses are her employees whom she has authority over. The following facts emerges from the affidavit by the prosecution and the second accused person. She is a well-known media personality with influential friends as confirmed by a letter attached to affidavit from the Senator for Nairobi. Her employer is very supportive of her as confirmed by the letter attached to the Prebail report. She is a mother of one with very supportive family and friends. The fact that she was in love with the first accused is not disputed as confirmed by affidavit. The only issue in this dispute is whether she is a person who is likely to interfere with witnesses or evidence. The only witness named is the second accused herself, and to my mind, her evidence seems to be related to what the prosecution calls secondary crime scene, whatever that means. As submitted by Mr. Katwa, the accused was arrested 10 days after the commission of the offense, and there is no indication by the prosecution that the second accused interfered or attempted to interfere with the witnesses and or the ongoing investigation, which seems to be only related to the first accused. There is complete silence on any allegation of an attempted intimidation or undue influence on the part of the second accused alleged influential friends. There is also no evidence that the same has attempted to influence the prosecution witnesses before or after arrest. The second accused has indicated that she has fully cooperated with the prosecution since arrest in giving out her DNA samples. The prosecution has only made vague allegations that the accused may tamper with evidence or witnesses. Is she a flight risk? The prosecution had portrayed a second accused as a media personality with very influential friends as stated herein. She is currently employed and the employer has indicated that upon her release should resume a job. She has a strong social support who would not let her abscond unless they are part of the others not before the court. The accused is a single mother of one child who now more than ever before needs her presence, noting that should she be convicted, one of the sentences which is available is death and or long imprisonment. She needs to be with her child during the period of trial so as to inculcate to him values and memories which will make him a better citizen tomorrow. I would therefore dismiss the prosecution contention that a supportive family could step in to take care of the child, as Article 53(1)(e) places parental responsibility and protection upon the mother and father of the child, and further that the child's best interests are of paramount importance in every matter concerning the child. Whether she needs protective custody. The prosecution submitted that having raised concern about her security and safety while in police custody, she is better off placed under protective custody. To this, the second accused has submitted that she is more safe outside than while in remand. There is no indication that she is a flight risk. At this point in time, the accused is considered innocent and the court can only restrict her movement if there is enough evidence placed before it to support the contention by the prosecution on the need for a safe custody, which the prosecution has failed to do. There is no evidence tendered to show that she is under any threat of whatever nature, and therefore find this contention devoid of factual support and merely speculative. Whether being a media personality is a ground to deny the accused bail. This court has had to deal with a similar situation where the allegations were raised that the accused should be denied bail because he's a man of means in the case of Republic versus David Mushiri Mwangi, to which the court had this to say: the fact that the accused person is a man of means, in this case read influence, in itself cannot be a ground for denial of bail unless it's proved to the satisfaction of the court that he is using the same means, for this case influence, to defeat the cause of justice, which is not the case herein. Save for the fact that the second accused is alleged to be an influential media personality, no material has been placed before the court to show how she is likely to use the media presence or influence to defeat the cause of justice. While the influence of an accused person may be a ground to deny bail, the state must place before court enough material to support that contention. The accused is still presumed innocent till the time the guilt is proved, and as per bail and bond policy guideline, she has all the rights to maintain her social status and fabrics. Ms. Moniki, for the prosecution, urged the court to put restriction on the second accused, and in particular her presence on TV screen. I've noted that this is a noble point which has not been tested in our jurisdiction, and from the submissions before me, I note that this is a complex and substantial matter which needed bail hearing so as to test whether or not the presence of the accused on a screen would intimidate or interfere with witnesses so as to affect the administration of justice. At this stage, however, it must be noted that the accused is still presumed innocent, and the court must guard against making orders which might be perceived to be confirming that she is guilty in the eye of the public. The bail policy guideline under General Principle 3.1 states that the accused should be allowed to keep the fabric of her or his life intact by maintaining employment, family and community ties, and any order which the court makes in this regard ought not to be so strict so as to be incapable of compliance, thereby making the grant of bail illusionary. It is for the judge to introspect what might be the right thing to do, always based on the facts, but without leaving behind compassion. I should therefore comment on this further while setting out bail terms in respect of the second accused. Whereas at this stage the court is not required to go into detailed analysis of the prosecution case which has not been presented before the same, the court must look at the material placed before it by the prosecutions, and from the affidavits of the investigating officer, it comes out that the role of the second accused relates to what allegedly took place in her house, which they have termed a secondary scene. The second accused, on the other hand, is so sure of her innocence that she is convinced that if she were to be convicted, she will only be convicted on offense of being in love, which is not a known offense under the law of Kenya. Which is not a known law under the law of Kenya. Though I take cognizance of the fact that love can make people do very strange things, as I'm told that in the Bible, one person called Adam, knowing very well the law of God and the punishments for eating the forbidden fruit for the love of his wife, Adam went ahead and ate the same so that they can die together if they must. I think I've said enough on the issue of the stability of the second accused to be granted bail, as the decision to grant bail or refuse bail is only based on probability and not certainty. And since our courts are not gambling odds but forums for discovery of truth based on the relevant material placed by both sides before the court and the authorities in support, I'm unable to agree with the prosecution that the factors presented individually or cumulatively raise a possibility that the second accused would abscond, interfere with witnesses or evidence, or influence the nature of the prosecution case against, or to act in any manner prejudicial to our intended trial. I therefore find and all the other prosecution has not placed before the court compelling reason to enable me deny the second accused the enjoyment of a constitutional right to bail, and those advanced can be adequately accommodated by relevant bail terms and conditions, and order that the second accused be released on bond pending trial and determination. What now remains is to set out bond terms and conditions. The starting point being the constitutional injunction that the terms must be reasonable. On behalf of the second accused, she has deponed that a sum of Kenya shillings 350,000 cash bail with one surety or two surety of similar amount would be reasonable, taking into account the humble circumstances of herself, family, and relatives. The state and the family of the victim were silent on what would be reasonable terms. The Constitution is silent too on what are most reasonable bail terms, but the court must take into account the nature of the offense, the likelihood punishment on conviction, and the likelihood of accused in honoring bail terms if granted. In this matter, the life of a young Kenyan girl was lost, and the offense has pricked the heart of the nation on how it was committed and has attracted wide media coverage. The paramount obligation is to issue bail terms which will make it necessary for the second accused to attend a trial if and when the case is fixed for hearing. Noting, as stated herein, that one of the punishments upon conviction is death, sentences and bail terms must make it hard for the second accused to abscond at trial. Guided by the principle set out by this court in Republic versus David Mushiri Mwangi, I am satisfied and have considered opinion and all that a bond of Kenya shillings 2 million will be very reasonable. I therefore order that the second accused be released on the following bail terms: a bond of Kenya shillings 2 million with one surety of a similar amount, or with alternative cash bail of Kenya shillings 1 million with 3 sureties of similar amount. The second accused shall not make any contact with any of the prosecution witnesses, either directly or indirectly, until final determination of this case. The accused, upon a release on bond, shall, in the presence of an advocate, accompany the investigating officer to a residence where the said investigating officer shall, if not yet done, take inventories of any evidential material thereat, including taking photographs and graphs, before being allowed an exclusive access thereto. Finally, on the issue raised by Ms. Mwaniki, and having stated herein that's a novel area, and taking into account the fact that the second accused had the misfortune of reading the news in respect of the deceased death, I'm of the considered view, and all that some limited restriction is necessary, is reasonable and justifiable. I therefore direct as follows: the accused shall not read news, comment, or participate in any interview directly or indirectly related to this case. The accused shall not read news during the period this matter is fixed for hearing. The accused shall not interview any parties directly or indirectly connected with this case, including the victim's family, the advocate, and the prosecution witnesses, and including the trial court. This order is subject to review by the court from time to time, and it is so ordered.